You're listening to
Catholic Sprout,
the daily podcast for Catholic kids that strives to plant seeds of faith.
Hey there, Sprouts. My name is Matt Ingold. I am your host this week on the Catholic Sprouts podcast, and we are exploring your unique design. But first, today is Friday, September 13th, 2024, and the feast of St. John Chrysostom. Now, St. John Chrysostom, whose name actually means golden mouth because he was such an amazing preacher, he was the Archbishop of Constantinople in 398. He's also a doctor of the church, which means that we hold his words in higher esteem. Now, he was a physically frail, right? But he was also one of the greatest preachers in the history of Christianity. His sermons were so amazing. Sometimes they would last 2 hours. I know some of you were like, oh my goodness, if somebody's homily in church lasted 2 hours, I don't know if I'd want to make them a saint. But he was just so amazing. People would just listen to him and they didn't care that it was 2 hours long. We have some 700 of his sermons that are available to us still today, have survived the centuries, and he's known as the patron saint of orators, which means speakers, preachers, and just other speakers out here as well. So, St. John Chrysostom, pray for us. Yesterday, we talked about naming your ideal conditions. Remember, folks, when we're exploring our unique design, we're looking at these we call them 5 points of awareness, that when we grow aware of these things, we start to understand the unique way that God has created us, the unique way that he's designed us. And God doesn't design things out of no purpose. He has a purpose, a mission in mind for us. And so we can start to explore these things that are unique, unrepeatable, and irreplaceable about us. We start to understand the mission that God has for us. And when we know what that mission is, we can say yes to opportunities to engage in that mission, to enter into that mission. Guys, every single one of us has a mission. Every single one of us is called to be a superhero in some capacity. And the more we know what that mission is and the more we say yes to it, the more we experience the joys of what it means to be a Christian, united with our Lord and living in our gifts. And that's what I desire for each of us here today. All right, so we talked about ideal conditions yesterday. And those ideal conditions are those environments where it makes it very easy for us to show up as our best selves. But then there's this other part that we're going to explore today, this other point of awareness, and it's called our triggers. Now, triggers are the opposite of ideal conditions. Those are the circumstances or environments that actually incline us to show up as in our weaknesses or not as our best selves or in ways that we're a little bit ashamed of, perhaps. Okay. So you think about that word trigger, all right? When we think about triggers or things that have triggers, when a trigger is pulled, whether it's on a gun or a bomb or a fire alarm or even a trigger on a camera, something happens, all right? So the trigger goes off and something immediately follows right after that. That's kind of what a trigger situation can feel like for us. Something happens and all of a sudden emotionally we react, right? We get angry, we get frustrated, we get defensive. When we can start to identify those environments or those situations, whether it's somebody yelling at us or somebody making fun of us or somebody maybe being a little bit too loud or imposing or something like that, when we can start to understand those things that cause us to emotionally react, we can start to do a little bit of work on that because we're not meant to be just slaves to our triggers. Our triggers are opportunities for us to grow. I think a great movie, one of my favorite movies that illustrates this is the Back to the Future trilogy, right? So if you're familiar with the Back to the Future trilogy, it's a time-traveling movie, and central to the movie is this character. His name's Marty McFly. And Marty McFly I love him. He's a great character, but he has this trigger, and his trigger is when somebody calls him a chicken. I know it's like, does anybody really get offended when somebody calls you chicken nowadays? But like, he was really offended when somebody would call him a chicken. And when he would do that, he would react. He would do silly things. He would do reckless things, dangerous things. He would get into car accidents and he would pick fights with people that are 10 times the size of him. All right. And one part of the trilogy, we actually go into the future and we see where this reaction to this trigger of being called chicken actually really set his life on a path that was not where he wanted to go. He had this dream of being this amazing musician, and it was one of his gifts. I mean, it was a God-given gift for him to be able to sing well, to play the guitar well. Well, somebody calls him a chicken and challenges him to a road race, and he does it because he doesn't want to be a chicken, and he ends up getting into a car accident. And because he had that car accident, he had to give up his music career. See, folks, Sprouts, this is what our triggers do to us. they undermine the gifts that God has given to us. And in some cases, they can even take those gifts away if we're reckless about it. Now, the good news here is that there's redemption for Marty McFly. He time travels, right? And so he's able to look into the future and he's able to learn the lessons of just reacting, constantly giving into this trigger of being called a chicken. And there's the end of the series, the end of the trilogy, where he's facing off that guy who invites him into this road race again. And he calls him a chicken. You think that he's going to do the stupid thing of do the race again. And instead, he doesn't race him. And he says instead to his girlfriend who's in the car with him, he's like, I'm not stupid. I'm not going to do that. I'm not going to continue to be triggered here. And he watches as the car races ahead. And right at that moment, just a few moments later, another car pulls out into the middle of the road and he would have hit that car. That was the career-ending car crash that he now was able to avoid because he learned how to control that trigger. He learned how to manage it. He learned how to be virtuous. Folks, this is an invitation for all of us. Those triggers that we have, oftentimes we can feel very ashamed of them. We can feel very upset with ourselves. We can beat ourselves up. That's not what they're for. They're opportunities that God is allowing for us to realize that we need to grow. He's inviting us into a deeper place of relationship. God is knocking on the door of those triggers and inviting us to let him in. He wants to heal our hearts, Sprouts. We have a saying at Metanoia Catholic. We say triggers are trailheads. These are things that God is allowing because he wants to come into our lives. He wants to be in relationship with us. And he wants us to live in our strengths because just like Marty McFly, who I like to think went on and became the amazing musician that God called him to be, we have our unique gifts and talents that we can only live in when we are living virtuously and we're starting to just move away from those triggered environments. Okay, so like we've been doing all week, I'm going to give you a couple examples of some common triggers that are out there, and you can identify if these are things that are areas of struggle for you here as well. All right, so example number one, waiting on other people. All right, do you have a difficult time waiting for anything or waiting on other people to do their part and get things done? Are you triggered by, like, say, feeling isolated when nobody's around and all of a sudden it's just like, oh man, I just feel very agitated when I don't get to interact with other people? Are you triggered when there's a last minute change, right? Something disrupts your schedule and all of a sudden it's just like, oh man, what's going on? I don't know how to respond here. Are you triggered when there's conflict, maybe conflict with your friends where it's just like, oh my goodness, I feel like just so agitated when these two people don't get along? Are you triggered by maybe just like criticism where somebody offers some sort of criticism and you really just kind of take it to heart and all of a sudden, rather than thinking about how, okay, I can take this and reflect on it and maybe grow a little bit more, you just go internal and you just feel ashamed and you feel beat up by it? Are you triggered by just being around negative people, right? Maybe you're a very positive person and when you're around negative people, it just drains the energy out of you. And all you want to do is just make them, try to find a way to make them stop being negative or just, it's like, okay, I'm getting out of here, right? I got to leave. All right. If you identify with any of these triggers, no shame, all right? The Lord is knocking on those doors. Those triggers are trailheads. So here's my invitation for you here today, Sprouts. Take 5 minutes to pray and ask yourself, when was the last time I reacted in a way that I was not proud of? All right. And then ask the Lord, what are you wanting to heal in me today? Where are you inviting me to grow? And then pray for God to heal you, heal this part of your life, and perhaps show you a different way of looking at this situation. Okay, Sprouts, that's all I've got today. All I got for you this week. I've enjoyed this week with you. Remember, you are unique, unrepeatable, and irreplaceable, and God has an amazing plan for your life. God bless.
That's it for Catholic Sprouts today. We'll be back tomorrow, but until then, continue to grow in your faith and truly sprout into the beautiful creation that God created you to be.
Hey parents, we all want our kids to be happy and holy, and one of the best ways that we can do that is by helping them to discover their unique design and their mission. And guess what? It starts with us leading by example. At Metanoia Catholic, we help people discover the unique way that God has designed them to bear His image to the world. And there's nothing more fulfilling than when you can live in your God-given unique design and your mission. And one of our favorite ways to help people explore this is by way of their temperaments. We offer a free temperaments assessment at catholiccoaching.com. And there's also a number of resources that we offer in our Metanoia Catholic Academy to help you explore your unique design and mission by way of your temperaments. And we also offer some coaching in there as well. It's a great opportunity for parents to just grow in their own self-leadership so they can be better leaders for their children. To learn more how you can unlock some of the gifts of your temperaments and your God-given unique design, join us over at catholiccoaching.com. You can also check us out at the Catholic Coaching Podcast, wherever you stream your podcasts. And we invite you to take that free temperaments assessment today. God bless.
This podcast is part of the Spoke Street Network. For more great podcasts, visit spokestreet.com.